How would you like to start?
Let's begin.
Let us begin.
Hello, I'm Simon Boxer.
I am Jacob Janerka.
Together,
We are
Bone
Assembly.
Oh my god.
we practiced that 100 times. No, we just improvised it. We just
Right on the spot. We made this up. Fresh content for you.
we just relax. You know, this is exclusive for Melbourne International Game Week. We hope you enjoy it. We've got our little skull buddy here so you can hear us. Our magic microphone magic through the skull, and I hope
Sound teleportation.
sound teleportation. This is one of the great, designs that these kind of minds create.
That's right.
Big quirky
Technology.
characters.
So we're going to be talking about Winnie's Hole, which is a twice different project. That's a separate company that I'm on. And the Dungeon Experience, which is both of our projects. And Jacob is the creative director on the Dungeon Experience, and I'm the creative director on Winnie's Hole. So we're going to talk about creating oddities, character design in Winnie's Hole and the Dungeon Experience. So I guess first, do you want to introduce what the Dungeon Experience is?
Yeah, the Dungeon Experience is a comedy adventure where you visit a high fantasy theme park run by a low-level mudcrab turned business entrepreneur. There he will give you the quest for the greatest loot of them all, financial freedom. So imagine it kind of like Stanley Parable, but it's on $100 budget, and it's
Our budget.
with the actual game budget, the budget of the person running the high fantasy theme park is $100.
Yeah.
And the narrator reads self-help books.
Yep. And Winnie's Hole is a strategy roguelike, so it's a pretty different genre, but you join Winnie the Pooh on an adventure from within as a virus within his body. So you're capturing cells within Winnie the Pooh to manipulate the way he grows and, make him a bit more fit for survival. He's kind of, a bit of a feeble, lumpy boy. And he doesn't really have many natural defenses or offenses. And the virus sees his host as this, and you are just trying to cultivate him into the best sort of beast for survival by growing extra body parts. And that's what we're doing.
That's how Simon pitched the project to me. He's like, I want to make a game about a feeble, lumpy boy. And that's what I really want to do.
That's right. And who is the perfect feeble lumpy boy that's just entered public domain? It's gonna be Winnie the Pooh. Most recently entered public domain. So I guess we should jump into some questions. I'm gonna be looking at a laptop because this is where I store my notes. So I thought maybe we'd start with the protagonist, like why we chose our protagonists. So in the Dungeon Experience, it's a level 1 mud crab, and in Winnie's Hole, it's Winnie the Pooh. And this is actually, for Winnie's Hole, it's quite a common... there's a lot of conceptions when you announce a game that's subverting a wholesome children's... it's got all age appeal, but a wholesome book that's, child-friendly content and turn it into horror. There's a lot of kind of like cheap remixes of it, I suppose, or like, people use it for shock value. And there's definitely that as a point of appeal for us making a game derived from the Winnie the Pooh IP. But I really like the way that the character contrasts against the other characters that we have in the game. So the virus that you play is not actually like a sinister evil virus, as you might expect from a sort of horror-ish content. But, viruses are just around to try and survive. So the virus is trying to refine its host, and it actually thinks it's doing Winnie a favor. So Winnie is kind of like a naive, wholesome, bumbling character. And he's playing off the idea of sort of the, a character that's not very self-aware, infected by a virus that's trying to build him into what the virus thinks is an ultimate form, is, I think, quite an interesting contrast, which we get to explore in the story. And so definitely there's a lot of facets for why I felt like it was an interesting endeavor to try and turn Winnie the Pooh's, or make a Winnie the Pooh derived game that splices these two aspects together.
did you feel like at the beginning you kind of had that mindset that you wanted to give it this like extra depth rather than was the original idea is like, all right, I'm just going to use this IP, like turn it horror, that's kind of cool, or you like that like pretty early on you're like, oh no, but I still want to treat it like really well, not like a cheap knockoff?
I think it started sort of as we were prototyping a monster building game, and then it was derived from that. So I think like a lot of products and a lot of design or the way that we probably both approach design is very iterative. And then it started as a joke project actually. So
yeah,
it started as a joke.
Yeah,
we were turning Winnie into a monster, which ended up being hilarious. But also, as I was doing this and exploring the intent, it seemed like it was a worthwhile avenue to explore and turn into a full game. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, just like kind of falling in love with this like disgusting creature, and you wanted to give it kind of justice.
I mean, yeah, like also being able to make a horror like crossover that's actually good.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Like, I think this is in general in creativity, but with character design especially, it's like really bad to approach anything with a cynicalness. Like, it's something that is like so pervasive. If you are making something in a cynical way, or you don't care about the original content, like people can really sense that. Well, I feel for you, like you didn't approach Winnie as a cynical thing. Like you really wanted to make it cool and interesting, as opposed to some like other people like they latch onto that initial concept, it being funny, and like that's as far as they take it, and cynically will like execute something like that.
Because I think there is a lot of potential with public domain content to make really good stuff. But the other big benefit, which I didn't mention, is that when you start with a known character, like that's globally known, you've got so much story and character development that you don't need to do in the game. People can jump into the game, they know what their character is, they've got those expectations, and so it cuts out a lot of character building that you need to do, and then you can just get straight into introducing the new characters that you're contrasting against them. So I think that's a huge benefit as well. Yeah,
I mean, that saves a lot of time. I mean, you can see with like Marvel movies where they introduce characters like every reboot, and it just gets exhausting. Like it's just, and because they have to spend like half the movie explaining their origin story or like why they exist for new audiences or whatever. But like with Winnie the Pooh, you're gonna avoid a lot of that, and obviously over time the story is gonna reveal probably, well, depending on what kind of narrative I'm just like turning this game into a big narrative game. It's a systems-based virus who wants to build it.
It's a 20-hour story. Not really.
It's like an opposite of what we're doing basically. It's like we're on this project for making this like super high-end story game, while Simon's making his systems. Like I don't do systems. I just make the jokes. I only write silly things.
But there's a lot of the exploration that you've done for the dungeon experience is a lot more like obviously this project's been going for 5 years ish. So there's a lot more depth and exploration that has been done so far, and so you've really kind of tuned into what characters need to be and what you need to be designing to make everything connect up together. And do you want to talk about the crab as a protagonist?
The crab as a protagonist.
Where that came from?
Yeah, so the crab itself in the game, technically he's not the protagonist. He's like the buddy character, so he's like the voice in your head most of the time. So you have a silent protagonist that you can choose dialogue options and stuff. But the crab is like the character that you're interacting with, and the whole game is kind of based around, it's like a character work on seeing his life and helping him through all this kind of stuff. And the initial concept of the dungeon experience was just, it stemmed from me playing Dungeons and Dragons with a dungeon master, and they were all right, but I just kept imagining like, what if there was just a really bad dungeon master, but they were trying their best. And I thought that was like an interesting concept, as opposed to like like Stanley Parable, for example, has this omnipotent, like powerful being that's like controlling all these like crazy surreal doors and controlling like all these puzzles and stuff like that. But I wanted like the opposite of that. Like, what would someone trying to recreate that on a shoestring budget with like cardboard boxes and trying to create this experience for you, but still loving it.
I think it's also a great character because the Crown is a great character because of the whole, like, being a level 1 mud crab, like the worst monster.
Yeah.
I remember when we started making this, I think I was playing Dark Souls 3 and in the world's fighting those tiny crabs that you just basically walk over.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's such a good fantasy trope. I mean, it's like, yeah, Oblivion and Bethesda games had it, and one of the main things that from my childhood was like in Morrowind, there was a talking mud crab merchant. And that kind of was pervasive. And when we were thinking of the idea, we were like, yeah, who is this dungeon master? How can we make it interesting and appealing rather than it just being some dude, right? Like, I see so much of that where people are just like, it's just a dude that is like doing something. It's like, when you have the ability to create these like fantastical worlds, like, why don't you go hard on it? Like, that's my personal like feeling on that. I like having characters that, like, if you can do it, like, why don't you just go super hard on it? Because you're not limited by like film or even animation with 2D stuff. It's like you have to kind of design to make it simple. But yeah, our character is actually very simple though, the crab, which is really good.
I think there's a lot of charm as well in choosing a mud crab specifically out of all of the Dungeons and Dragons creatures. Like, you could have had a goblin or like a more fantasy thing, but the crab is like between fantasy and real world because it exists. Everyone knows what a crab is.
Yeah, and it's
a mud crab.
Yeah, it's surprising. Like, even when we originally thought this is how long the project's been going for. Like, I feel like crabs became in the zeitgeist like in the past 3 years or so, 3 to 4 years or something, and just the act, like the character. So Simon designed the actual design of the character, and he did a really good job of he's really good at making cute characters and terrifying. And like the two sides, right? Like, my other project has a terrifying character, so I guess we like, we get sick
interchangeable.
Just the act of him, one thing with the project was the way that his legs move. We made it procedural, and like for ages there was like a big thing on Unity. It was like, hey, let's make these procedural legs or whatever, and it became kind of tired. But like, when we applied it to the crowd, I'm not saying ours is better than others, but it just like added, because all the little click clacks just made it so unbelievably cute. Like, it was just a basic animation before, but like, it was such a big thing, this tech thing, to make the character like infinitely cuter.
Yeah, our sound designer Dimitri has done a great job of the audio for crab as well, like those sound effects around it, and of course the voice.
Yeah, and John for setting up the tech, our programmer.
Yeah, so I thought maybe we'd go on to talk about the thought process for designing characters. So when I was sort of writing these notes, I had this observation that it's funny how we like design characters but don't actually really think a lot about the process from an art standpoint before doing it. But reflecting on this, I noticed we've got a lot of characters that kind of fit a role in the story. So there's ones that are designed out of their role, like middle manager Murray, co-worker Colin, the therapist. But there's also a lot of characters that grow out of like an absurd dominant gag or like a feature that they have. So we've got like Table Man, a man that's got a tabletop in his back. We've got like a giant sphere with arms, which is, the main antagonist.
Yeah.
T-shirt lady, cupboard lady, these characters.
They're just verbs and whatever they are. Broken. Well, our character was named initially Broken Legs.
Well, yes, we had a character that was defined by his broken legs, like an adventurer that had fallen into the dungeon and broken his legs.
But he enjoys it though. That's the
the idea is to sort of empower his experience. I mean, his experience. But yes, we have these characters that are defined by, or that were originally designed around sort of the gag. And then when you've got an absurd character like that, how do you connect them to the story? When you start with the gag, how do you go about connecting?
I think yeah, it's like the gag thing is, for me in my design process, is like really important. I'm trying to find things that are on paper immediately funny, which gives like an initial interest, like not only from like a game point of view, but also a marketing point of view as well, where you're able to show a character and it'll bring a lot of joy to people without actually experiencing the content. But what I like to do is like bring back that character into reality and give them an empathetic kind of view on like their experience of like why they're doing this thing, like why are they in pain, or like why are they like for example, like t-shirt lady, which is she's wearing like 200 t-shirts on herself, and I just thought that was just like such a funny visual where people do this like for charity, they wear like a 200 t-shirts, but that looped in back into the story where our game is a lot about like MLMs and pyramid schemes, and people get super desperate about selling their stock, and a lot of the time they don't sell any of it, so they have to like accumulate all their stock because they have to keep buying it so they don't get kicked out of the organization. And her idea was that she would have to wear all her stock on herself at one time, so no matter what, she can sell her stock because she's always wearing it at once, right? And like
saves on warehouse fees.
Yeah, exactly. I should write it or copy that down actually for her to say that.
On storage, yeah.
So that's like an example of like taking this absurd concept and actually bringing it back. And I really love doing that with characters where people often will come into my work and being like, what is this like random thing? Like, this is so ridiculous. And then they, with the voice acting and with the character and the design, that you're like, okay, there's actually something here that's not, he's not just being like throwing random words out and being like, I'm the quirky guy, like, you know.
I am curious about the sphere, giant sphere.
Orb is the official name of their species.
Non-infringing name.
It was initially called a hand holder, but we decided to go to Orb. Yeah. Which is a good name because he has hands. But you know, we decided to. Sorry, what were you going to ask about?
Because this was one that you sort of envisioned, and this is like your brainchild entirely. The orb, basically, which has kind of developed an identity as like, you know, he's got to be perfectly spherical.
Yeah, he's obsessed with his supple lips and being like his species is like obsessed with being super circular. And I don't want to spoil too much. There's some things later on in the story, but it was, if you like, one of my friends joked to me that my design style is like little face. Like that's all it is. Little face. Little face, big eyebrows. Which is true to some extent, but that particular character was just like, I love the look of non-infringing characters from Dungeons and Dragons, and made a little face, like the actual human face on it. And I just love the look of it. And then when I posted it online, also people liked it as well. So then we started implementing it into the story, and I created this whole mythos around these characters and stuff. When you were doing Winnie, was there any other characters that you've implemented into the world that you feel like you've added onto like the lore of Winnie?
Yes. Yeah, so we are trying to have characters that were inspired by the original ones, but we've largely deviated for the surrounding characters. But the original cast has inspired sort of like what we've built around them. I don't like there's some really big spoilers in that question, so I don't want to talk too much about what we're doing.
You just gotta buy the game.
Maybe I'll talk about the approach that we're doing in terms of like, I actually had some notes about this somewhere in terms of revealing and like revealing characters. So I feel like when you reveal a character, there's a moment of impact that you can leverage for different ways. And with the dungeon experience, we've got the comedy of, you know, like the way some characters are revealed is by objects. Like,
like hidden behind stuff.
Yeah, hidden in things, obscured by physical structures. But I noticed in Winnie, we don't have physical structures because we're not exploring a 3D world. So they're usually obscured by costume. So we've got, like cloaked figures and that sort of thing. Like characters that you can kind of see their shape, but you don't know exactly who it is. And we want to be able to use that to create a sense of mystery and surprise over the long term, because these are like multiple encounters of a character. But in the dungeon experience, we don't really have that use of reveal for mystery. It's for like punchlines of a joke.
Yeah.
So it's more like a quick reveal, which is suited to comedy. Which
like a surprise,
kind of interesting
surprise kind of thing. Yeah.
But we do have sort of like the inverse of that, where characters reappear in different costumes.
Yeah. A lot of costumes have a lot of characters have costume changes, which I think that is like one of the themes in the game is like people wanting to have different identities. So like the characters are always kind of like trying to be something else to like find themselves and that kind of stuff.
The themes of escapism sort of stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that most times when people were buying cloaks, it was to conceal their identity? Like when they were buying cloaks, were they just like, I need to conceal my identity? Or was it
you talk about in
like medieval times?
Oh, in medieval times. Yeah, probably. Probably like,
do you need to conceal your identity? The cloak. Is it like a VPN for?
It's probably like 40% weather shield, 60% hide yourself.
I guess it's the equivalent of like a hoodie in modern times, I guess, or like try to...
Yeah, here to do crime. It's a crime cloak.
A crime cloak. What are you using this cloak for? You don't need to hide your identity.
Yes. Yeah, all right. Let's... what else can we talk about? We got some storytelling through character design. So I had a point on the actual art development, like the actual concept arting.
Yeah.
So for Winnie's Hole... I work with an artist, David Smith, who's amazing, up in Queensland. He has been designing a lot of our new characters all of our new characters since we've done a bit of a style update since the announcement, because we weren't really sure exactly where the game was going to go and how it was going to be received, but the announcement kind of gave us a lot of confidence in investing more and really polishing it up. So... some of the approach that he uses in terms of when I might say like, oh, we need sort of like a raccoon character, or we've got like an animal list, because we want to populate basically the 100 acre woods or our equivalent, which will just be kind of like a forest or like an animal kind of, a colony sort of thing. We don't want to go full Winnie. It's got a bit more of a sort of almost medieval fantasy twist to it. And those sort of like Lovecraftian Cthulhu kind of, there's this virus that's a bit, it's a bit like dark magic, but it's still a virus. And so I talked to him a little bit before this about how he goes about designing characters, and he sort of had this insight about thinking about the role of a character and their physical appearance and what that might be associated with in terms of like how that translates to a human world, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he was talking about an example with raccoons, how typically in cartoons, because they've got the kind of black, masking on the face, they're typically like a bandit kind of character, and people often characterize animals in a way where they have roles that are adjacent, personified in that way, which I thought that was pretty interesting. Are there like when it comes to thinking about the look of a character when you are concepting it, what would you talk about in terms of your approach with generating like storytelling ideas on its?
I think for me it starts off as like a brainstorm of like thinking of funny concepts and trying to find something that it like hits, and then it goes into sometimes it can start off with like a funny image in my head, but generally after that it's like finding the funny face shape language of the character. Like it can be so like you can get a lot of mileage out of shapes to create like a funny silhouette. because you know, of course, comedy can come from anything, but like in terms of like visually funny, like I like combining that kind of stuff. And yeah, like again, back to t-shirt lady, just the silhouette of like the huge body with like the tiny legs and stuff like that. And table man, yeah, just someone like you could put that with a black silhouette and like recognize it immediately, like someone is like being a table and stuff like that.
What about Fabian, the wizard that's like basically a boy wanting to be a man, a man-child wizard.
I always forget, like I actually didn't interpret him initially as a man-child. That came later. I mean, the idea was this character was just wears like cheap wizard costume stuff that you'd see in like your like $5 shop or whatever, wearing his like fake
It's like a fake mustache.
Yeah. And that's like very important. It's funny when you're doing a stylized game, you have to make a lot of effort to make something look shitty in
the right way.
In the right way, that it looks like it's in the world that they're wearing a bad prop, not that you have made a bad model. There's a lot of anticipation for that.
There was a bit of discussion actually around delivery woman, the woman that delivers your package at the start of game. Jacob put in this animation for the walking of delivery woman, where she kind of stays in this crouched position and like rotates her legs around.
Yeah.
I mean, we can probably find footage of this.
It's based on a real walk though. Like I recorded myself like walking this way, so it was like a possible walk. It looks janky but it's like it's a way that someone could actually walk. So there was like that. That was kind of like the like, okay, this is a janky walk cycle for 3D, but it's like something that is can be construed as someone actually walking like that, not like we've broken the armature.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about where do you define the line of like, because we were trying to figure out for a while. I was like, this looks bad. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like it's made intentionally. It just looks bad. But then I think the whole game around it has been polished so much that you just know that it's
it's like a contrast of like what other some of the polish, because like obviously early in the project so much of this game is like polished, so it's really hard to tell people like no, this part would be like really nice, but this is supposed to be this look really bad. And it doesn't really, the comedy doesn't hit until you actually put all the like polish. And how did you feel with Winnie, with designing the characters from being a children's book to something like more serious, like adding your like medieval spin on it? Did you struggle of like where you wanted to land that, so people didn't want to look at it and be like, oh, that's a kid's game, I'm not going to play it?
Definitely.
To like, oh, this is like an old school, like beautifully illustrated fantasy thing.
Yeah, for sure. It is a continued struggle. We are still iterating, and I'm sure by the time we actually launch, there'll be some characters that we have now which are iterated on and changed to be, more cohesive. Because we have like characters that are all over the spectrum of like, some look like knights. There's like a chinchilla with a halberd. And then some characters are just like the possum's just sort of like a mother of a bunch of possum babies, or there's like...
Are you murdering this possum mother?
Just tell me.
You're okay, right. She's protecting her little possums. They're evil possums though, don't worry. They're going to grow up to be murderers.
Terrible. You can see it in their eyes. But yeah, no, we've got cast of just normal characters. Like, it's kind of... It is a bit of a challenge to say, oh, should we go with this weasel thing being like a chef, like the stereotypical kind of like chef-looking character, or should it be this bandit thing? Because there can be more neutral characters that exist in the world, and like you're sort of touching on, we don't want them. They're not evil characters. No one in this world is evil. They're trying to save Winnie. Winnie is. The virus is acting in Winnie's defense because he's under attack and trying to be cured. So there's... actually that kind of leads into another topic about like the dynamics between characters and how we design and write around that as well. Because we're trying to build up this narrative of like... of the depth in the story is delivered through the characters, where you're trying to establish that each set of characters have different beliefs about the world. And that's how you can, tell a story about character growth. So the virus is going in, and the virus is just about survival, but it is sentient, and then it can learn in this situation. Yeah. But the virus thinking it's doing Winnie a favor by turning into a destructive machine.
Not be killed.
And that's because the virus doesn't understand like friendship, where Winnie is actually friends with all of these animals. Yeah. And it doesn't understand that it is perceived as a threat.
Yeah.
So, there's some really interesting questions around like how you design them and their interactions. Like you're talking about, do you make them do you make like a chinchilla try to slice Winnie with a halberd? Yeah. And I think that's kind of fitting, but like there's definitely a line to tread.
Do you ever personify the virus? Have you ever thought about personifying the virus and talking and stuff like that?
Yeah. We definitely need to have a way for the virus to communicate, because we need to. There's so many jokes that I want to include that require
some dialogue.
The player understanding what the virus is thinking, and requires dialogue between Winnie and the virus. Or like the virus and characters and Winnie and characters.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept actually, like a virus that, like there's a few games around that, like there's like that Devolver game that has like you break out a science facility.
Yeah,
like, I don't think it's a virus, I guess, it's just like more just like creature.
You're an experiment.
But I do like the idea of like a virus that's like taking over people and communicating through like vessels and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think it extends to a lot of interesting ideas in the world when you think about the possibility of there also being other viruses.
Yeah.
So
could it be sentient enough to like take over a scientist to manufacture its own vaccine? I don't know how it would be.
Like a euthanasia measure?
Yeah, its own stuff.
Self-euthanasia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that'd get pretty
dark. So that's what character design is about. So you go into the deep depths and then going, oh, maybe we should reel it back a little bit.
Do you have favorite sort of dynamics between certain characters in the dungeon experience, or anything that...
Yeah, for sure. There's so many characters that, like one of the things that we initially struggled with the game was that the protagonist is silent. So that you can't have banter back and forth between a character. You can do that with like dialogue choices, but it's really difficult to have the really snappy, funny dialogue of characters talking back and forth. So at the beginning of the game, you meet a bunch of different characters, but they're not interacting with each other. But eventually, spoiler, the main character like follows you around, and he has this dynamic with one of these characters that visits his fantasy theme park. And the crab is desperate for friendship, and he wants your friendship, especially. But this particular other character, even though this character also wants friendship, it's like the only character he doesn't want friendship for. And he's constantly trying to like...
As in the crab doesn't want to be... No,
the crab doesn't want to be friends with this other character, while that character desperately wants friends as well. But he's like, I want friends, but not that kind of friend. And it's a very funny dynamic when the characters interact and back and forth. And
very relatable as well, probably.
For a lot of people.
Basically everyone.
But there's like, all sorts of like other... this is the crab interacting with, different characters. And even later on, it interacts with the player a lot with its like player action. One of my favorite parts is that there's a part in the game when you're like driving a car, and like I don't want to give away too much, but the car acts as like an interaction on like all sorts of things, and the crab like reacts to you interacting and going against him and stuff. So there is like that kind of banter between you, the player, doing an action against his will, or something that he doesn't want, which is fun.
I think that's how you create interest in that's how you make stuff like an adventure game compelling, is you play agency by the opportunity to
mess with characters.
It's basically like a trolling experience for those that want it.
Yeah, totally.
Being able to break the limits, because a lot of people, even with games that aren't meant to be sandboxy, like especially making strategy games, a lot of community comes in and they're like, I'm going to break this game.
I think
do it a different way in adventure games.
I think it's fun in that respect because I mean that's the great thing about games is that you don't get those opportunities in life to like you. I mean you can troll people, but often to the detriment of the detriment of them and yourself. Consequences.
But we want to make the consequence fun. Dungeon experience.
Yeah.
So if you like to troll people, just play the dungeon experience.
So do you have any favorite characters in Winnie that you've come out recently?
I actually do really like the chinchilla with a halberd because it's just so ridiculous. Yeah. It's like the cutest character we got with the biggest weapon.
Yeah, is it like, how big is the chinchilla? Like, is it actually like a little...
It is the smallest, roundest character that we have. Yeah, that's good. Of fun, I think. Are there any characters you decided not to include?
Characters not to include? I think there's a lot of characters that I couldn't include because I couldn't make them fit the concept, right? There's like a lot of...
like the dumpster raccoon?
Oh yeah, dumpster raccoon. Like that. There we go. There's like another 2 combinations of animal and object. I'm trying to think of a character that like I had to leave out for some reason. Because there's a lot of parts in the game, like it comes down to scope where a lot of the time where it's like, okay, this character would be really funny to have here, but it would be an issue.
I have a pot room.
The pot room. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, the game went through a lot of different plot changes, and there was a part of the game where the crab created this like Zelda, you can like smash pots. And the crab basically created this room where you have to smash as many pots as you can in like a minute. And then when you get to the next room, it's revealed like it's like a storage area for like a person who like creates pots as a like lifelong art project. And they're like painting a pot and you have to break it to them that you've like broken like all their pots. And it was just this like really excruciating scene where this person like starts sobbing. It sounds a lot funnier when you play it. A lot less cruel, yeah. And then the crab like gives you an invoice of like all the pots that you've broken and stuff. But it basically, just like it was just it was one of those things. It was way too random for the scene and didn't fit into this like maybe halfway through the project we changed it to MLM and pyramid schemes, as that was a grounding object for this like fantastical world, because it was like, why was the character visiting this theme park? Like I needed something, a reason to find a mystery.
Yeah, I suppose the actual story design was similar to the character design in the way that there was some set piece kind of joints placed around rooms.
Yeah,
but then you needed to cut them out, like the respawn room. I thought could have been pretty funny, but it also it's like a weird lore thing.
Yeah, it broke it. Like a big problem that we had with characters was like whether or not to have magic in the world, and explaining the like. As soon as you add magic and like fantastical characters, you kind of you can write yourself into a wall, or like of the player understanding like, what is this world? Is it half magical? Is it modern and stuff like that? And we had a part in the game where this was actually one of my favorite gags in the game. That actually a character thing that we had to cut out was to reset the game. You had to like convince a character to stab you. And you would get respawned in this like respawn room, which was like basically cloning you. And it was just like so far out of the like, what do you call it when you like, when you watch a movie and you pretend to believe in it, like something reality.
That breaks the fourth wall, like breaks the immersion basically.
No. You can watch a movie and even though there's plot holes, you kind of like push them away.
Oh yeah.
There's a word for that. I'm sure you know people shouting at the screen, but yeah, it was basically
continuity maybe.
Yeah, but like why are you getting killed? Why is there cloning technology? Like, where does this come from? Like, is there no stakes anymore because you can just like clone yourself? So that was stuff that gets.
I think I did think was also going to be funny with that room was the whole like, the room has also got poison stuff.
Yeah, that's right. You can poison yourself. Yeah,
you could basically grief the crab by making it
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
poisoning yourself.
Yeah. You also constantly. Because it costs him a lot of money to clone you, so that it's like causing him like financial
hardship.
Did you have a character you had to cut out, Winnie?
We have
For legal reasons, right?
So originally we had a koala with a gun. So we had the koala just holding a deagle.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hilarious because this was when we had the previous art style with the storybook characters that are all like, educational.
Yeah. So it's a huge contrast. Yeah.
And then a koala rolls on with a gun. And a lot of people in the community that have seen that really found the koala with a gun funny, but we have sort of reined that in such that guns do not exist in the
right
at the moment.
That's so OP as well for
yeah, but
you can't shoot a virus.
Who knows? I might still add a koala with a gun just for old time's sake. But the other thing is I don't like guns. I don't want to support the idea of guns, but it's such a common thing in games. So there's that consideration as well, which is
yeah, I think it just depends on what kind of audience that you're going for. And I think personally for my work, I like showing this kind of the darker things and even though you can make light of something like something heavy as guns or whatever, you can still make political commentary on it. One of my partner's favorite quotes is from Terry Pratchett. I won't be able to repeat it off the top of my head, even though I've heard it a million times, but it's comedy kind of breaks the barrier of the taboo. So you're able to discuss things that are normally, it would be very hard to discuss a dark subject, but by adding humor.
Yeah, so one of the questions that you'd written down was, how do you make a character not annoying? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think I specifically wrote this down about voice acting, particularly a character. A character can be annoying for all sorts of reasons in games. They're constantly talking to you and they're constantly making jokes the same way. I think in terms of a game design point of view, it's creating a character that has a lot of variation and not repeating a callback gag constantly that it becomes tired. So you have to create a balance between it, and obviously you can design a character to do something annoying to you, but over a time and it's funny, it can stop. The biggest character is Claptrap. Everyone is people love Claptrap, but some people hate Claptrap.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I feel to me, when I see that character, why people hate it, it's because he keeps on making the same jokes over and over again, especially if you're shooting in a game. But I think voice has to do with it. Some people don't like Claptrap's voice.
Yeah, I think
because it's whiny and
voice.
I can't remember.
Can be terrible for a lot of people. I did actually see a Reddit thread recently about what's made people quit games the most.
It's the voice.
The top comment was bad voice acting.
Oh, yeah, I think it's really difficult. I think when we were doing the crab, I was definitely scared out of my mind to cast him as an annoying voice, because a character can have an annoying voice in a game and it'd be fine, but if it's constantly with you, which the crab is, it was so important that we had to find something. And I definitely showed multiple people to get their opinion on how it was. I originally wanted to do the voice of the character myself ages ago, but I just couldn't perform the American accent well enough. Now I got a lot better at it when because I'd voice all the scratched audio, but it's it would be annoying. It'd be an Australian kind of being American. Yeah, it's a real difficult thing, and it is pretty subjective, but
yeah,
there is some voices that objectively, if it's talking to you all the time, it can really mess you up. And sometimes it can be the zeitgeist as well that just happen to hate that particular kind of way they're speaking. It's the Whedon speak, right? Over time, people started really when Firefly came out, people loved it, and then now it's become so overused that people hate really quippy, he's behind me right now, isn't he? You watch Firefly and that's still really good. I think it is a writing issue, but yeah, it gets tired.
Definitely writing comes into it, and also I think quantity is a big thing. You compare a game Trover Saves the Universe with an RPG, and Trover's just constant voiceover.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's some games where like if you don't like that type of comedy or character, like don't even bother, because it's like you're gonna hate it the whole time. But that's like the appeal of those kind of games. Like I'm sure there's gonna be like my other game Paradigm, like some people like I hate the voice, like I hate him constantly joking. But on the other side, people are like, I love it, like I can't get enough, I want to hear more. Like you're just gonna get those things and you have to deal with it, because some people are just gonna really hate it.
The constant joking actually kind of reminded me of one writing aspect that we did.
Yeah.
However, the first iteration of the game had a lot of, well, the way we were doing dialogue was basically every choice that you had was a joke.
Yeah.
There was no contrast. So you need, like, it prevented us from being able to put ourselves in the body of the main character. You want to, like, I don't know, probably a lot of people have played a game where you're looking at the dialogue options thinking none of these don't relate to any of these.
Yeah.
But then simplifying it to sort of like a positive, negative, and a joke, or neutrals and a joke, helps everything shine, helps lift everything up.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a huge contrast. And you can still get a lot of comedy. Like it's not even just like a neutral answer. Like you can get a lot of comedy out of like really dry answers as well. Like that's the thing, because the problem that when we were writing the dialogue choices before, they were like really surreal and like totally out there, like someone just blurting something out like crazy, like a Mighty Boosh character, like you're just controlling a Mighty Boosh character.
Thinking about hot dogs.
Yeah, something like that, right? And it's just like, I like hot dogs, and the guy's like, I'm asking you about your taxes. And it's like, it's just not funny after like the third time, and gets exhausting.
I think in terms of making characters not annoying as well, as this is like a genre question too, because the expectations of the audience are very different for an adventure game versus like what we're making, which is like strategy roguelite basically, which is very like mechanics heavy. A lot of people go into that genre to master the game, whereas for an adventure, it's you want that story.
Yeah, but that's kind of the nice thing that like with Winnie is that you can put in nuggets of comedy, and it's like people aren't expecting you to keep making jokes, and when you do make the joke, it's like really powerful. Like if you play like other big games that are like supposed to be big dramas or whatever, like when they do make a joke, it like really hits hard, and there's no like huge expectation, so it's like a nice surprise. But like if you advertise yourself as a comedy, you better hope that you have to like come to those expectations. It's like if you go to if you come to a comedy, like you talk to your friend, they'll make some jokes and you'll laugh. But if you come to a comedy show, you're like, laugh at me, funny man, or whatever. And it's difficult to make people laugh when they're expecting to laugh.
Yeah, I think also we are fixed with Winnie's Hole being sort of like a roguelite, more like bite-sized game.
Yeah,
we were also a bit like the way that we make a character not annoying is by making them not talk a lot.
Yeah, that's a big thing in games.
Limit the exposure, and also make everything skippable. So if people are really just there for the mastery and not the story, skip through it. That like this, we need to be really careful with how much we make people read.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's just a constant problem with video games. Expectations. And it's because you have a skip button, and if you don't, like with a movie, it's like obviously you're watching it for the narrative and stuff. So, but it's like it's very funny. Like even I expect people when they play the dungeon experience just press the skip button. It's just because it's like a attention span thing, and even like I will skip dialogue on game, even like Baldur's Gate or something. Like I love that, and I'll still sometimes, if there's a part where I'm like not super interested in the performance, I'll read it and still enjoy it. Like that first second that you hear of the character talking, it's like almost like filling in the gaps for the rest. But yeah, that's like half my job in dungeon experience, was like cutting lines down to the funniest part and like trying to explain concepts really quickly and give exposition in funny ways, because people just hate reading and
it's also when a joke goes over multiple lines, it's like making sure the premise is still present as you're setting up the punchline. Were there any of these points that you particularly wanted to talk about?
Oh, like I talk about I'll quickly talk about a character, a Blemius. I don't know if anyone. I don't think that's even. I don't think that's even the right way to pronounce it. But it's like an ancient folklore character where it's just like a body without a head and the face is on the stomach. So this is going back to my friend being like, your design is just like little face. So it has like a full face on the body, and I really love the aesthetic of these characters, like these medieval whimsical characters, and I wanted to implement it into the game, and I just had it in the back of my head for a long time, and I, instead of being like the other designs where I'm giving them like story and background, this one was like I implemented this character because I needed it for a puzzle in the game. So there's a part of the game where you have to enter a room, and this one person like wins a competition to enter that room. So your job is to look like that character. And I was just trying to think of a creative way to like make yourself look like a character. So this Blemius has a torso body, like face on their torso. So you as a player who's like supposedly like human, you have to put I'm just gonna spoil it, I guess. That's probably fine. You gotta put the crab like on your body as a face and like put a big oversized shirt on it. And that was like a puzzle design where I'm like, all right, the character is informing the design of the puzzle.
I don't know if you mentioned that the Blemius is like a headless character. It doesn't,
I did say, yeah, has a head. Yeah.
But it has the face in the middle.
Yeah.
We'll have the picture, I guess.
Yeah,
probably didn't need to clarify.
Yeah, that's very confusing. But I promise you, like half the concepts that I have for the game are like being like, trust me, it'll make sense when you play it. And
if it doesn't, we'll cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Do you have anything you want to finish up on? You want to talk about with Winnie? Do you have something? Because like obviously there is some controversy with like public domain stuff. Do you have like a pre-ready, like when people come at you, they're just like, I don't like you doing this. Are you ready? Like, I do it for these reasons, and if you don't like it, go away.
Well, I think there are good reasons. I mean,
because you turn people on Twitter. I've seen that, like, where people are like, why are you doing this? And you're like, oh, these are good reasons why I'm doing it. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just think it's make Winnie evil trope.
Yeah, okay.
But that's not. That's the main thing. Is I think a lot of us, well, probably like a lot of customer, community relations sort of stuff. It's like people want to say their thing. And I do want to hear the feedback because it does inform our choices of how we present stuff as well. And it really helped solidify that it's important for us to say that it's not making Winnie evil.
Yeah.
The virus is not evil. Like, even in the real world,
it's just neutral.
Organisms aren't evil. Yeah, everything's just neutral. But because so many people have done, I mean, not that many, but there
just recently,
shock value content made from, all sorts of children's content, like people putting screamers at the end of Peppa Pig or whatever they're doing. It's like people lump us with that. So part of the communication is just, alleviating that concern. But we can't do that immediately. Like, the best way we can do it is just get the game out and then finally have people see that we're trying to develop a story where the characters have depth, and maybe there's something interesting like in terms of interpersonal relationships and that kind of philosophy around that people can get from the story. Yeah. As well as a good time playing a challenging roguelite.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be good. I think that'll be like, I always love subverting player expectations, and I think that's like a great way to do it. Like, people will be like, oh, it's got a really cool gameplay, but it's also kind of got this like interesting story thing. I feel like people had that with Ring of Pain as well. Like, even with the it's such, you've like made a minimalistic roguelike, but then people were kind of surprised about the depth of interesting story that you've woven into it.
Yeah, for anyone that hasn't seen Ring of Pain, this is the Twice Different Studios' previous release, which is like a roguelike strategy game in sort of a world distorted by your mind. But yes, definitely something that I think is really important for indie games is making it a cohesive product, which means we set out to make roguelites or strategy games, but a strategy game can exist just as a mechanical challenge. But I think adding the story and adding some interest in that aspect, building that out, really helps broaden the audience for these types of games, which can appeal to more people, but don't always. And probably similar for dungeon experience, like making a comedy-centric adventure game, because so many adventure games are more puzzle-based, I'd say. Even the sort of puzzle design that we've kind of included is not as heavy in the...
No, it's definitely like half of the, in quotation, puzzles are more like interacting with your world rather than having to think hard about the thing. And it's designed in a way for it to be engaging and not just like, purely just dialogue trees and stuff like that. There are things breaking it up. And I think, some of the things I struggled with my previous game, point and click game, like a lot of people love it, but when you introduce it to someone who never played point and clicks and have no interest in puzzles, it can be excruciating for them, even though they want to keep continuing hearing the funny dialogue or like hearing the kind of stuff. So we try to make a balance and make it good.
Yeah, I think something that's important for both of us is just giving players a new experience.
Yeah,
and this is like something that we can leverage as indie games taking risks. Like we don't need to get the upper approval or giant teams to do something a bit weird. So you should play our games.
Yes.
You should wishlist our games.
Please.
Go wishlist the dungeon experience.
Please wishlist.
Please. And Winnie's Hole. And then play them. Yeah, we'll have demos out.
No, don't play them. Just don't install them. Just.
Don't install them. No. It'll be too late for that by the time this comes out.
Just watch them in your Steam library and lovingly.
Yeah.
Because it'll always be better in your head.
And the dungeon experience will have a demo out soon.
Yeah, it'll have a demo, a public demo, not during PAX, but it will have some in the future, and you can play it at PAX. And the pop-up monsters friends pop up.
Yeah. And Winnie's Hole is a bit further from having a public demo, but if you're interested in testing, you can join the Twice Different Discord, which is discord.gg/Twice Different. And you can follow us on Twitter.
Jacob Janerka.
Boxel, SBOXLE. And you're also on TikTok.
I
see the fun memes.
It's where I thrive on my rollerblades and drink milk. So if you like those two things, you definitely should visit my TikTok.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Thank you for listening to us.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
So long.